Welcome to Business Playmakers, the podcast that meets with innovators, trailblazers, and leaders to learn about their experience and what success really means. Hosted by entrepreneur and leadership coach Kyle Gorman.
Business Playmakers is presented by the Employer Blueprint. Employer Blueprint is dedicated to management and leadership development through one-on-one coaching and group seminars. You can find free resources from Employer Blueprint through YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And for more information, simply visit employerblueprint.com. Hey, this is your host, Kyle Gorman, and I'm pleased to introduce you to today's business playmaker, Amanda Owen. Amanda was a multi-year all-state competitive softball player in high school, and that drive and that passion led right into her professional career. So she actually went to school to get a degree in special education, which she successfully accomplished, and was in the school systems to start her career out, but continued to feel that she could do more to give back and to help individuals with intellectual disabilities. And so that led to this idea and this concept that she had for what later became the nonprofit that she founded and continues to run today called Puzzle Pieces. And so the first thing I want to encourage you to do is when you have a chance, go check out www.puzzle-pieces.org and learn more about that organization and what she's been able to build there. But Amanda, through building this organization, has built an amazing name for herself and has been able to share her story. And I'm pleased that she was able to take the time to come meet with us and share with you her story and her passion. Her passion and drive are rare, they're infectious, and so inspiring. And so it's such an honor for me to have the opportunity to meet with her. I think you're going to love the story that she has. And I hope that it inspires you not only from a business perspective of what can you do to help grow and develop and drive your business, but more importantly, what can you do to give back to others? What can you do to support others in your community that need support? Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Well, Amanda, I really appreciate you coming on the show today and kind of sharing your story. And I know it's been kind of interesting. You've had a very unique journey into where you are today and what you've been able to build and establish. And I know you've got a lot of future plans from there as well. So as we just kind of dive right in, why don't you tell us a little bit about your professional experience and kind of what that journey's looked like to this point in your life?
Well, I'm honored that I'm on here. It's definitely a pleasure. I go and speak a lot about where I came from, and it comes more driven from passion. Mm-hmm. So that's really what has led me up to this point, my passion for individuals with special needs. So I started off as a special education teacher, and as that teacher, I wanted to do that because I have a brother with special needs. Mm-hmm. So I kind of wanted to give back and teach people like my brother. So that got me involved in teaching. Yeah. And when I taught for 6 years in that role, I realized I want to do more. Yeah. And realizing that there was a need in our community, especially to reaching individuals with special needs beyond that in the classroom, and helping to support their families. So that started in looking at administrators and principals and in our community as a whole, just kind of thinking outside that box of what can I do next to fulfill the lives of individuals with special needs, which led me to, establishing Puzzle Pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Puzzle Pieces.
So we're excited that we just celebrate our 5th year anniversary. So it's hard to believe, but whenever I was a school teacher, I realized that a lot of other families had the same needs that my families had, or my personal family. And what was I preparing their life for after high school? And I didn't know that answer, and I didn't like that there wasn't an answer out there. So whenever I realized that there was a need, I just figured out, okay, how can I surround myself with people that would help me fulfill this need in our community? Right. And that led me to I mentored with SCORE. It was out of the chamber, kind of did
it was for small business.
Yes, and it was free.
Incubator.
It was kind of free. They were retired business people. Yeah. And those two gentlemen, I sat down because initially I was like, okay, here's a need. I'm going to make a business out of it. Yeah. But then when talking with them, I realized that I didn't want to make a profit. I didn't want money. I wasn't doing it to be for the money. I was doing it because there was a need and I had a love for individuals with special needs.
Yeah, yeah.
And so then they were like, have you ever thought about a nonprofit? And I'm like, no, I didn't know that I didn't know a nonprofit could operate as a business.
Right.
And so I was very intrigued by that. And then that started the exploration of how do you run a nonprofit? How do you apply for a nonprofit? And so we created the mission, we created the vision, and we went from there. And I'll never forget, I had a parent meeting where I was like, okay, I'm going to invite these parents that I know that they have children or adults and children with special needs.
Yeah.
And there was 32 individuals that showed up just through my connection with either my brother or being a teacher at that point.
Yeah. Had
a meeting, kind of shared with what my vision and my mission was and what I wanted to open. And they're like, oh my gosh, yes, we need this. Yeah. And it kind of steered of opening Puzzle Pieces, which is an activity day center for individuals with special needs.
That's awesome.
And we've grown that over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's really neat. Yeah. So it's, I'm sure a lot has changed in the last 5 years as far as kind of that initial focus and just this, truly to be able to see something from idea and concept to brick and mortar building and people, and that's a lot in 5 years. It's a lot of change and growth and experience. So I commend you for that. That's
Thank
neat.
you.
So through the course of your career, are there any mentors that really stand out for you that have helped you along the way?
Like I said, I originally started with the SCORE, just knowing that this was here, and there was two gentlemen that, I don't want to say their names, but there was two gentlemen that really kind of inspired me to, go into this nonprofit and hear how you do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be, I guess, cliche and say, my families and things like that, but there has been significant roles of one was a parent of one of my students who really had me think outside the box of understanding people with special needs.
Yeah.
And then mentoring of some of my peers who were successful business people.
Yeah.
And surrounding myself, always having those talks of like, well, how did you do this? Like, what steps did you take? In referencing that. But then I had this one college professor that really, she spent a lot of time with me. And I actually went back to get my master's, and she was my mentor there as well. But Dr. Bowman was her name, and she really just inspired me to continue to think outside that box and pushing me to, I guess, go down a path that wasn't original to everybody else.
Right. Because
I looked at individuals with special needs a little bit different, and that is my profession. I know that I keep referencing that, but that my profession has been the impact of changing people's lives and families with people with special needs, and just her mentorship of just encouraging and I guess reinforcing that I was on the right track of not going with what the trend was. And really going back to my heart and seeing everybody as if it was my brother.
Right. And
staying true to what I'll never forget, I was a school teacher and things weren't going well. I almost quit my first year of teaching because it was so hard.
Those first couple of years are tough.
When you're learning yourself.
Right.
And I'll never forget calling her. I'm like, okay, so many people are telling me this, but she's like, follow your heart. Do what you know is right.
Yeah.
And that right there, I still go back to that conversation, and that was almost 10 years ago. Of just inspiring me to kind of follow my heart, and just because it might not be the same viewpoints as somebody else, that somehow it will be what it needs to be.
Yeah. That's great. That's excellent. And it's good to have people in your life that can help steer you in those directions, just provide those insights that maybe you don't get from just everybody. And especially that tell you to kind of buck the trend. I think that's always good because the trend isn't right for everybody.
And bucking that trend sometimes and being the rookie on the block, it can be a little rocky.
A little overwhelming sometimes.
Yes.
Absolutely. So through the course of your career, whether it be through education or with Puzzle Pieces, either way, are there any kind of pinnacle or peak moments that you've experienced that just sort of that moment that you'll never forget, that this was a really big win for you?
Wow, that's a tough question. I think for me, was more of just understanding the impact that I was having at Puzzle Pieces, of hearing the impact and the feedback from not only my staff. I thought I was going to change the lives of people that I served.
Right.
And that was what I wanted to change, those lives. But I think the moment that I received feedback from a parent of crying and realizing that I changed their entire life by just helping to support through the service.
Right.
And then a staff member, going on to pursue their dream and always coming back to, we still have this one staff member. She was there from the get-go. And every year when we celebrate our year, there's a card that comes in the mail, and she tells me where she's at in her life.
Wow.
And what an impact. And she still congratulates us, and she follows us. And that to me is an epic win, no matter how many fails I have at this point, because there is probably more of that. But to realizing that every day I move to have that much of an impact on the people that maybe are not just getting our service, but our employees, the community members, and most importantly, the family. So I think that's been that epic win, I guess, for me. Is just knowing that every day in the triumph, the victories and the struggles and the challenges, there's somebody that's happy about it, and hearing that sometimes is beneficial.
Yeah, that's great. And I know, before we got on air, we were kind of talking about some management things, and that's one thing I think it's easy for people to lose sight of, is the impact that a great manager can have on someone's life, because they spend so much time with these people, and I think that it's easy to lose sight of that, but the impact that someone can really have on an individual's life and just their personal well-being, and even just their kind of general health, and that so many times in that type of role, when you're leading people, it's important to keep that in mind, just that people are looking for that, and that you really are making a daily impact on their lives that can really make a difference long term, and people are going to remember you for that. And you've got to decide whether you're going to make a good impact or a bad impact.
Oh, absolutely.
But you're going to make an impact either way in a lot of those leadership roles. And so, I've often said that if you work one day, you fail at something. And so through the course of your career, is there any one moment, one particular valley that you faced that hopefully now that you've come out of it, you've learned a lot from it, but is there that one thing that you say, I remember going through this experience, it was awful and terrible, this is the one I'm going to tell my kids about, don't do what mommy did because I messed up on this one. Do you have that kind of professional fail that you experienced?
Well, I have two that I think that is pivotal. I think with me being a woman, and I don't want to say women, men, or anything,
there's
but
a lot of truth to that. Yeah.
I think that one of my most epic fails that I'm still trying to. I think that I'm not naive to know that there's things that you're always, if you're going to be successful, you're always trying to be better at.
Right.
And I think in a personal but yet professional is learning how to balance being young in my marriage, and having two young children, and realizing that you're building something. You're a visionary. I'm trying to build a vision and a foundation of an organization and impact the lives of other people. And sometimes if I'm putting them before my family, that realize that the two that matter the most to me are my little ones, but sometimes not always realizing that somebody else will help me to do that.
Right.
But not everybody can help me to grow a organization.
Yeah.
And learning how to balance that. And I think that one thing was my fail and my win at the same time is when my little boy said, a client came to live with us. Well, he's still living with us. And when they were able to relate and ask, is he a lot like Uncle Nick Knock? And I knew my brother has special needs.
Yeah.
That was the moment that I finally realized that all of everything come together because I was able to give them this sense of experience of who made me who I was.
Right.
And they were to piece that we live each day to better other people.
Yeah.
And they knew then and then they connected that to puzzle pieces.
Right.
And so that was a huge win.
Yeah.
But then there's part of me oh my gosh, did I just do it again? Did I put the lives of other people before my own?
Yeah.
So it is a balance. So that's kind of been something I've struggled with as a fail. But then on a professional fail, I hate to say as a fail, I think it's a growth, or you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
But I recently, in celebrating 5 years, I'm kind of going back to the heart of where we started and realizing that the staff that I had when we were very young in our growth, I was constantly talking with the staff. I was constantly with the clients.
Right.
And I had a new staff member come to me and some of the things that we were doing, and she was like, we just don't see you very much. And I was like, wow, like that, in trying to grow something, but missing that connection that I used to have, set really hard with me. And I said, I actually just said this in a staff meeting like 2 months ago. I said, I always wish for more time. Like if I had more time, I would spend with you guys, or I would do this. Yeah. But when you're wishing for it, you're not putting it as a priority to make it a goal to do it. It's just a wish, and you're not making it a priority. So I promised to him then, like, I've learned my lesson. Like that moment when I didn't know the staff that was sitting in front of me, and I heard it, and they didn't know who I was like, okay, that's where I have failed. I have grown too much, and I've been discomplacent. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for.
Spread out. And
yes. So that was a fail for me in that moment.
That makes sense. And again, it's a good lesson learned, and better to realize it now than 3 years from now when you realize you really have no idea who these people are around the table.
Right.
So it's good to keep our eyes open. So Amanda, how do you define, kind of based on where you are now, how would you define success?
That's a tough question, and I realize that everybody has a different definition, but I look at success, how I look at it now versus how I looked at it a long time ago. A while back, I would think success is, business people that made a bunch of money, drove some cars, and things like that. But now that I can say that success, it's more about quality. And I think for me, those two words go hand in hand. It's not necessarily about how much you grow or how much the organization's making or in the in the black, or how many employees you have. It's not those numbers. It's really that impact and quality. And if I can walk away and define that my quality, like for example, going back to my fail, that moment for me was like, wow, I'm not being as successful as I want to be, and making sure the quality of the environment and the service that we're providing is point on to what it really was in my vision and my mission. So I have to kind of go back to that. So I guess that's where the success is, not being able to balance everything, not being able to drive the best car or, have like this ultimate growth, because we have grown a lot over the 5 years. But I keep saying to everybody, and they're like, oh, y'all have been so successful with opening a new place and things like that, and congratulating that. But and I've been approached with many different things. They're like, well, if this is successful, then surely you can make this successful. Right. And I have to go back to, what's the definition of that success? Are we success because we're growing and serving more? Right. Or are we successful because of the quality of what we're doing to be able to have that impact? And so for me, success goes hand in hand with quality.
That's good. That's an interesting definition. I like that. And so I want to touch on this for a second. You talked about, maybe how it's changed, and maybe at a different time in your career, this concept of success was about, making the money and growing things and driving sweet cars and doing these types of things. And as that's changed in quality, so let's kind of talk about the evolution of that change a little bit. And we'll, maybe if we can step back maybe 5.5 years to right before, kind of in this conceptual time of puzzle pieces. Do you think at that point, how would you have thought of success then compared to where you are now 5 years later, and you're looking forward to what's our success in the future? How do you think that might have changed?
Again, I think it goes back to how much of that, it goes back to quality. I think whenever I first initially started, the success was just opening the doors and starting this glamorous service that I was going to change the world. And at that point, I could not put faces or names to what that success was going to be. I was looking at numbers. I was looking at just a budget plan and staying true to that budget of like, how can I just make it happen for the year?
Right.
So at that year mark, I was successful because we didn't go under, we didn't file bankruptcy, and we were a little bit sustainable. So, you know, of looking at, so there I was thinking sustainability is success. My success then, or what I defined as success, was just making it happen, to keep our doors open. And now how I define success links back to quality. And yeah, we definitely need to keep our doors open, but now I'm not looking at next year of if we're going to keep our doors open. I know our doors are stay open. So then now my success determines how many people I impact, and can I continue to, I guess, lead people to continue to grow and making sure that quality is there. Success looks to me totally different in the ability to walk away from this and knowing that it will survive.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that happens through, it's just people evolve in their career. There's different concepts and different modes. And I love the fact that you talk about maybe kind of early on in your career or maybe not even from a professional perspective, but just what you thought of, kind of quote, thought success was this kind of, it was all financial.
Yes.
You know, it's all about like the money and the big office and the big house and the big cars, and just over time how that changes, because I think that happens to a lot of us. And I think it's important for people to hear that you know, at 20 years old and in college, what you think success is going to be by the time you're, 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 is, whatever, that's going to change. And I think maybe the faster we find and define what that success really is for us, the faster we're going to find success, because we'll really understand what that is, what that happiness and where it comes from. So what are some keys you think, as you've defined success and as you've gotten to a point of a level of success, and I know that's kind of ever-changing, ever-evolving, and ever-growing.
Yes.
But what are some keys that you can point back to that have contributed to your success to this point?
I think surrounding myself with people that constantly made me define what success is and make me look at the future. And some of that was more of those that, challenged me in a way that maybe was questioning the success.
Yeah.
And then others that was like, gave me the pat on the back and the motivation to continue to go forward. I think it's good to have that balance, like playing devil's advocate type of thing. Yeah. My husband being one of those, like he just now started to grasp and understand that, what makes me happy and what my success is not going to help our bank account any at this point. Because whenever I'd be like, oh, well, I have this idea, like we're going to open a residential house. And he was like, okay, so what does that do for you? And I'm like, it doesn't matter what it does for me. Right. So I think that I need that questioning there from him and helping me to constantly go back to my core and what my heart says and following with my heart, because he's starting to grasp that, but I'm always going to have to answer those questions, I think. And
it's good to have that balance.
Absolutely.
You need that grounding in life. That's good.
But I think that sitting around and talking to not people that are changing the lives of individuals with special needs, but I'm just very motivated and be able to do that. I have to be well-rounded in a lot of different divisions of my life. So trying to have mentors in all different angles, but like how to be a better mom, but a working mom, and how to be a better wife, but a working wife, and how to be a better manager and leader amongst an organization, to how to fundraise better. And so I think the success is understanding that I have to wear a lot of different hats, but if I focus on developing one of those and leave everything else out, then there's no way I'll be very successful down the road. Then I've narrowed my vision. So I just try to have like my eyes wide open, and when I come across somebody in conversation pieces or just in talking with them about what they're doing in their life, believe it or not, it helps me to navigate my own experience of success. And even with my employees on the most simple, basic level, of them just trying to survive, of making not very much money.
Right.
But them surviving helps me kind of go back to my core of like, am I doing everything it needs to take to help them to survive? It goes back to what my heart tells me I need to do.
Yeah. And I think that's a critical component in it. And it is easy for us to get distracted by the shiny things in life. And, the common thread of all of this conversation for you has always been going back to the core, kind of going back to that core focus. And I think it's a great lesson learned for someone's success is the best way to define it is to understand what your core focus is, because if you can accomplish your focus, you're going to be successful. At that point, it's just, you're sort of defining these ancillary things around success. But if you're always focused on that core function of what's in your gut you want to do, there's going to be some content, some happiness, and some success in life. And I think it's a great feedback for people to understand. What is it? What are you really here for? What's your purpose?
I think it connects back to, like, I was a softball player.
Mm-hmm.
I love being around athletes, but
Yeah.
I was a softball player, and I was a pitcher at that point, and I was very successful in that, but realizing there was, 8 people, I always say 8 people behind me
Mm-hmm.
that helped me to, even though it was a pitcher-catcher game at that point, but everybody played a role.
Right.
And I think
Right.
I'd really try to take that as no matter how successful, or I tell my staff all the time, like, I'm the one that kind of gets to hear from families like, thank you
Right.
for everything you've done, or, go and have business meetings and things like that and hear what an impact
Right.
maybe complimenting that success and realizing I'm not really the one that's doing kind of the heart of that job. I'm
Right.
just, so I try to, along the way of that success, realizing that people are in my life for a reason, and they're the reasons to that success.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like team players.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to surround yourself with a team.
You got to surround yourself with a good team. One person can't do it. There's no I in team, right?
You're right.
Ever hear
You're
that one?
right. Yes.
All right, so let's look forward a little bit. And what do you think the next 10 years look like professionally for you?
Wow. It's funny because I'm developing a committee right now, realizing that it's not about me.
Right.
Sometimes when you have visions and you have ideas and you can't get them to excel, I realize that I need to be able to surround myself with like-minded individuals that they might not know individuals with special needs, but they know success and how professionally to look at the next 10 years.
Right.
So I think for professionally in the next 10 years, it's developing a core of committees and vision committee at that point.
Yeah.
But surrounding myself with the ability to develop other people to carry out growth instead of me being the center of and have my hands in a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Of being able to truly develop and grow our organization to impact more people, obviously, if there's a need, but being able to recognize when to stop.
Right.
So that quality will not be, distorted.
Right.
So the next 10 years, obviously, I hope growth, but it's just making sure that I'm still impacting people's life. And I think that more of a creating of awareness, not necessarily awareness of, I realize that puzzle piece is what we're currently doing with our employees. We have a lot of college students. So we act as a training ground. And now that I've recognized that, I'm really spending a lot of time to create a sense of understanding of people with special needs, especially that of autism.
Yeah.
And when they are going to be our future nurses, our future teachers, our future business people, of connecting back of how can they incorporate a difference of understanding for people and embrace that within their future. So hopefully in the next 10 years, I'm continuing to get those letters.
Yeah.
Every year we celebrate.
This is how we,
because it's creating an environment of love for one another, I think.
Yeah. That's really nice. That's great. And so as we look even maybe a little further in the future, what does the concept of retirement look like for you?
Wow, tough question, especially for one that I'm struggling right now. We're 5 years in. I'm still struggling right now to manage or delegate my role of understanding what the vision is. Because I think when you're looking at someone that's like, I'm a very passionate person, and if I know there's a need, I want to fulfill that need.
Yeah.
And so retirement, obviously, I'm putting into like a 401k and things like that financially.
Yeah.
But I don't know that, do we ever get to, like, when you're so fulfilled with what you're doing and you realize that you can impact people, I think that moment of, will I ever be able to retire and walk away from puzzle pieces, what I'm doing that I built from the ground up?
Right.
I like to think so, but I don't know that there will ever come a day that I don't want to be somewhat a part of it till the day that I die.
Yeah.
I've never thought of retirement. Do business people do that?
I've heard of it happening. I don't know. I certainly have a different idea of what that might look like someday, and because I'm kind of the same way. Like, if you love what you're doing, why retire? That's how, it's always been my thought. But then again, I don't know, there may be a day that I say, gosh, I do want to go play golf more. I don't know. So, but I love what you're saying there. And I think, especially in a situation like you're in, where you've built this thing, and obviously the hope and dream is that, when you're, 70 years old, that this thing is still going and growing, and, that it would be very difficult to walk away from that and not at least kind of have your hands in it and know what's going on, and kind of, just seeing this thing. And so I certainly understand and respect where you're coming from. And I tend to agree with that just the idea of, like, legitimately, truly saying, okay, I'm just never going to work anymore. Like, I have trouble with that. Like, I can't even, I enjoy, like, work is an oasis for me. Like, this is my getaway sometimes.
Right, absolutely.
And so, it's hard to even think about that. But so I certainly understand where you're coming from.
I think the moment that I retire would be the moment that I feel, not that I would not have a day of work, but the moment that, and I think we need to do this as leaders. Like, I love going back to this thing that I've been toying with. A true leader is developing other leaders.
Yeah.
And so that sometimes is hard, but I recognize that I need to do a better job of that. And so I guess the moment I can retire is when I realize that somebody else could probably do it 10 times better than I do.
Yeah.
And realizing that I'm developing right now is a core, like, I'm only in my 30s, but I'm in a core spot where I do need to be thinking. That should be part of my plan. And I laugh, like, do people really retire? But in order to be able to grow a business and an organization and have your legacy left, I think that you have to think of, what does the next 30 years look like? Who will replace you to run an organization and be a leader to continue to be that domino effect?
Yeah. And I think that's excellent. I think that's a great way to think about it. It's one of those things maybe we have to at least consider, but the reality is so far off. But so along those lines, what do you do whenever you leave here today? You find out that you just won $1 million. What do you do with that?
Well, being in the nonprofit world, I definitely donate most of it.
Yeah. You understand the impact that can have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's so funny because, the Powerball, the lottery was like big. So people had a lot of questions about, well, what would you do with that money? And I realistically thought in some of the conversations I had with people were saying, like, I would hire chefs. I would no longer have to cook. I would hire personal assistants to do my laundry and things like that. But I realized what motivates me in life and the place that I'm at is to giving to others, but also to be part of it. Yeah. I have to, what I preach, I have to walk what you talk, walk the walk, talk the talk, that type of thing. Yeah. So I think I would never pay for someone else to do something I can do myself. Yeah. but maybe I would pay for a life coach
Yes.
to help me facilitate.
Look, I don't want to make this decision. Just figure this out.
But I definitely would give back, and I think that I would set up maybe a retirement to where I could work for free for my nonprofit.
There you go.
There we go. That's what I would probably do.
Good. Well, so let's talk about how we can help some others. And the first way that I like to think about this is I think it's good for people to hear and understand characteristics within themselves, characteristics within others that people are looking to, that people migrate to. And so the first part of this is really, what are some personality characteristics that you either enjoy working for or that you enjoy working with? Personalities that you just enjoy being around, that you kind of migrate towards, that provide energy for you. What are those personality traits like?
People who are motivated just to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. I think for me, and that I challenge myself on this all the time, I don't, like in asking the same questions, and then I had to evaluate myself, like exactly what you're asking me to do for you. Like in thinking about that, they're understanding, they're flexible, they're dependable, they're able to manage people. But I think that for me, the characteristics I look for are they motivated to do the right thing and do what is right because it's the right thing to do, and not because they have a title or they feel entitled to do that. I like people who just connects and networks with people. That's my personality. I think that's what I inspire to do for others. Is show them that I would never do anything. I wouldn't ever ask them to do anything I wouldn't do for myself. Sure. And that's really the quality of whenever I look at a leader. I look at them and my mentors, and the characteristics is never delegate something just because you can. And because you don't want to deal with it yourself. And if you're going to delegate that, maybe explain that delegation and work as a team where they want that delegation. Is that, I don't know if I'm talking in circles.
No. I exactly what you're saying there. That being able to, we talked about this again kind of before we went on, this concept of like be the manager that you want to have, and being able to don't ask someone to do something just because you don't want to do it. Ask them because it needs to get done, and because it's their role, or you want to empower them, or because you don't have time or whatever. But have a willingness to do things and be willing to jump in. And I think that is that's certainly a good personality trait to have. I think that's a great thing to share with others, especially as people that looking to get into leadership roles. There's sort of some do's and don'ts, and one of them is don't get into a leadership role because you think it's going to be less stressful, or because you want to boss other people around. Like that's not, you're going to be a terrible leader. And so you've got to be willing to do the things that have to get done, to really motivate people. And it's good to be around those personalities of people that want to do the same thing, that are willing to lead by example sometimes when needed.
Well, and I think one of the things that I've learned as a characteristic I had that I had to change. And I didn't realize this until what my employees were thinking I was doing was micromanaging. And now I get that, but it wasn't that I wanted to do it by any means. I did not want to micromanage, but being a leader, I had a sense of guilt of asking someone to do something I could do for myself, because that's what I would never ask you to do something I wouldn't do for myself. But in walking away and realizing, yes, they had that role, they had that they knew that was an expectation. We've talked about it, but I had a sense of guilt. Like if I had free time, then I can help you and just take care of it. So you didn't have. I was trying to always take off their plates. And I never
really show you
realized
that I'm willing to help.
And trying to do that because that's what I value. I didn't realize they viewed it as a micromanaging. And so I had to really deal with this guilt that I had of stepping away and letting them be. It wasn't that I didn't feel like they were confident in it. I had all the confidence in the world. I felt it was more about me. I felt guilty.
And it's part of providing that autonomy to say, here's the separation, and either you finding other things or just empowering them to do it. And that's a really tough thing, especially as a young leader, a young manager, that is doing it for the absolute right reasons, but that perception is reality, and the perception is they asked me to do this, and then 5 minutes later, like, they're over here filing this stuff. You asked me to file it. I'm perfectly capable. And yeah, that's I think that's a great lesson learned. It's important to understand and see that in yourself and know how to change that.
I'm still trying to figure it out.
On a daily basis.
Yes.
So let's talk about kind of on the flip side of that. Are there any personality traits that you've experienced that are just sort of toxic for you, that you don't enjoy working with, you don't want to be around, that if you can try to avoid, that you will do that?
Oh, wow. Me personally, not wanting, it's hard now that I'm in the role that I am, because I'm that kind of the top of the chain type of thing, so my leaders are my board and things like that. So I think that me personally would be the non-motivated. I'm putting in time, this is just a job for me, right? And putting in time. So I'm more like the qualities and characteristics, personal, of a go-getter, strong, and more of a great communicator. Whether it is I think sometimes we struggle with communication because we don't want to have those tough conversations, and so we're trying to beat around the bush and trying to not. So I'm more of I like someone that will, if I'm going to look at my growth, I want it to shoot me straight and let's talk about it and communicate and come up with a plan versus, be passive aggressive about it. So I don't like those type of characteristics in people who I'm led by. Passive aggressive, non-confrontational. I love that. Just because we don't agree with something doesn't mean that it's a conflict or an argument. It is that we got to collaborate to figure it out.
Yeah, that's where growth happens.
So I think I'm trying to figure out, realizing from a leadership standpoint, that the people who work with me, I never like to say for me, but the people who work with me, we all value leadership in a different way. And I realized that my staff, I was delegating, and they were thinking, well, they have the leadership qualities because she's delegating to them and not to me. And when I realized that that's not what I'm doing, I don't like titles, I don't like those type of things. That's not how the personalities of my staff. So we do a lot of personality tests. I've learned a lot through basic personality tests, and realizing what I sense as a value is not what they sense as a value, and trying to navigate and realizing those personalities, and us as a team figuring out those personalities. So I think just taking I don't know, I'm being around that question. Maybe that's
hit it head on. And so, again, as we kind of think about how we might be able to help others that are striving for some form of success in their life, are there any resources that you might recommend, or that have been something to you, whether it be books or authors or speakers, or just things that conferences, anything that you've experienced that you would recommend to others that you feel like have helped you along the way in your career?
Well, I'm still navigating that for myself. There are some great books. I love The Compound Effect, and this Developing a Leadership Model is a book that I'm reading currently. I'm not good with remembering authors, so I apologize.
Sure.
But one of the things that I get the most value out of, again, I think we tend to surround ourselves with like-minded business people. For example, I'm in the world of special needs.
Right.
So that doesn't mean I should only network in the world of special needs.
Sure, exactly.
I think the growth of me as a leader and as an organization, when I meet for coffee, I'm more of a personal person. I'm a talker.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's, most of my professional development has come sitting at a lunch table or grabbing coffee with people who are in leadership business, whether that is in realty, whether that is, through the chamber, a bank, anything like that, just because I want to hear how they're doing life, how they're balancing life.
Right.
And just be able to ask those basic questions, because although I love those books, sometimes the books are not relatable to me being a woman, young, raising a family, and starting her own nonprofit business.
Yeah.
You know, that's sometimes really hard to connect with, but I love surrounding myself with people, and that's what I would, especially creating a board too, and looking at that, is I never love people that will only tell me what I want to hear.
Yeah.
And being like a yes doer.
Yeah.
And be like, those are not the people that help me to grow. And so I'm trying to find more of those people that will challenge me.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and get me out of my comfort zone. Like, I don't like doing big networking events. Like, I have a lot of social anxiety about that.
Yeah.
But I have to I don't look at myself as a business person.
Right.
And I don't look at myself as a leader. I realize that I am a leader and I impact people. But at the end of the day, when I look at myself in the mirror, I don't see myself that way.
Yeah.
I still see myself as that college kid that loves to have a great time. I just try to surround myself with people that are out of my comfort zone, that challenge me.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's great. And that's a great place to get inspiration. It's a great way to get resources. And I think I think what's brilliant about that is sometimes our tendency is to get people that say, you've got a great idea. This is wonderful. I love the way you've done this. But I think so much that key there is to find those people, just as you've said, that are going to challenge you. That'll say, that might be a good idea. What if? What about? What happens when? Or no, that's a terrible idea. That's not going to work. And it's great to have people in your life that are willing to say that, and for you to have the realization and understanding too that that's a good thing. Like, I'm not going to get my feelings hurt over that. I need that, because I think you and I are fairly similar, just in like, there's a million ideas.
Right.
And I've often say, I have a million ideas a day, and like 3 of them actually come out of my mouth, and 1 a week may actually be good. And so you need people around you that tell you when the other ones are bad, because if not, you'll do a whole lot of things and you won't get anything done. Right. And so I think that's great advice. As far as resources, look for those local people or people around you that you can leverage and lean on.
Because the one that will be straight with me is the one I'm taking the idea to. Be like, have you thought about this?
Right.
You're crazy. There's no way you have time to do that.
Right.
Then I keep, then it's a collaboration, and then after they make me think logically out of things. Yeah. And either I'm going to prove them wrong. Exactly,
yeah. And then that finally gets you to the point of, okay, this one may work. Or, you know what, that's an idea for another time.
Right.
And maybe it's worth just letting go of for right now. Sometimes it's important to know too. So before we close out here, what advice might you be able to give to other people out there that are striving for whatever success is in their life? What kind of advice could you give to people before we end?
Wow. Humble and happiness, like they go hand in hand when you're successful. Don't success, to me, success is not defined by what you thought it should be, and when you reach that point, it's when you at the end of the day can go home and be just happy with where you're at from your day to day. Yeah. If every day you can wake up and just be happy of knowing, and you don't dread something. Yeah. Yeah. No matter how big your bank account is, or how big your business has grown, or how many franchises or how many additions, I think at the end of the day, as long as you're happy with how you got there, and you didn't distort who your character is to get there, I think that is just being true to who you are, and not change your goal and your mission based on that challenging person that said, did you not think, not being able to, knowing not to, when you're going the wrong way, to prove people wrong, right, or you're going the wrong way to make somebody else happy and not yourself. That would be my biggest advice. That's what I'm trying to live by. That's right. Striving for it every day. Yes. Well, that is great advice, and thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for taking time out to come join Business Playmakers and share your story with some other people. Thank you.
Thank you for checking out today's Business Playmaker. Links to the resources discussed in today's episode are available in the show notes. For more information and resources from your host, you can visit him at www.kylegorman.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast for the latest episodes. And until next time, make it a great day.